how's it going? Welcome back to another great video with your host, The Savior. And yes, today we're gonna do a Sniper Elite Resistance review. This is based on the early access hands-on stuff, so I do hope you enjoy this Sniper Elite Resistance review. There's a lot to get into. Go back and check my recent video on discussing this game and what I think the reviews will be, my predictions and all that kind of stuff. Basically, go check that out if you want to hear the discussion around this game and what the wider gaming community actually thinks of this game and my personal opinion, but I will be giving you some of that today as well. But let's get straight into the positives and negatives like I do with all of my early access reviews, and hopefully that will help you decide if this is worth your time, if it's worth playing Sniper Elite Resistance, or if this is kind of a cash grab slash glorified DLC, which
Why don't you just take my blood?
This time you're exploring France and you're a British gentleman, so instead of popping meds to heal, you need to drink 5 gallons of tea 24/7. Sadly, that's not in the game, but still, you are a different character this time around because it is running parallel with Sniper Elite 5, so it is, cohesive in that regard. But what that means is this is basically Sniper Elite 5. It's pretty much exactly the same game. The only difference is playing as a new character, which you might have already played as in the co-op in Sniper Elite 5, and the fact that it adds a few new modes and additions. But basically, this is Sniper Elite 5. And that is why I am calling it a kind of glorified DLC. To me, this is kind of as if Shadow of the Erdtree called itself Elden Ring Point 2, okay? I honestly think that this is basically just a DLC, but it doesn't mean that it's bad by any means. I just don't think it warrants a full game at this point and at the price point when this could have easily been, like I said, a smaller, cheaper DLC, and then I think a lot of people would feel more like it was worth the money, worth the time, and all that kind of stuff. So let me just cut to the chase. I think the only people who are really gonna love this game are die-hard fans of the Sniper Elite franchise, because this does nothing new whatsoever. It uses the same assets, the same animations, and the same gameplay, exactly the same, okay? And I do personally think that Sniper Elite needs to evolve at this point. We have basically played the same game over and over again. I do understand why that is, because the core foundation of Sniper Elite is just so fun. And, there's a reason why everyone loves it.
Deinen Schwanz geschuten! Ja! Das ist gut! Das ist gut! Oh! Here's one ball! One fucking ball! Look at that! Yes!
Sniper Elite sadly has never really pushed the envelope forwards with any of its games. I feel like 5 did it the most because it opened up the levels so you can tackle it in different areas. If you want to go full stealth, you can do that. There's different entry points that allows for that type of playstyle. The same with if you want to go in guns blazing, and they did redefine the actual, combat. So you can literally just go up to people and just stab them like you're the goddamn Terminator, or just go in there with a Tommy or an MP40 and just mow them down, which is quite satisfying, and that has got better with time. At the end of the day, that is what this game is all about: completing side objectives, taking out the target list and the main target itself. And sadly, they just haven't really built on that foundation. They haven't, made new interesting side objectives. It is still very much you go in, you sabotage something, or you collect intel and stuff like that. They have the potential now to build on it, to add new interesting gameplay features, because they've got all the assets, like I said, but they're not doing that. So for die-hard fans, you're still going to get a kick out of this. Of course, it's still a lot of fun, but I'm saying that new people coming into this game might be a little bit disappointed because this is not a brand new game. This is just an addition to Sniper Elite 5. So I do hope you enjoy this Sniper Elite Resistance review, and I'm just going to get into the positives and negatives. But first, I will simply ask that you do consider subscribing, join the Wise One community today, become a Wise One, think for yourself. I'm just really passionate about this community and I just love having an interaction with you guys, listening to your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments. So please do sound off, because that's the whole fun of this for me, doing OG YouTube. And give the video a like, because that does actually show the algorithm what's worthy and what's not. So I would appreciate it. So this time around, basically, the whole point of this game is you have to stop the Germans from creating a super weapon. Yes, a super German weapon. Not the most imaginative concept, I've got to grant you, but this is Sniper Elite that we're talking about. It's all about gameplay. It's never about a good quality story. I do think that the writing in all of the Sniper Elite games have been pretty lackluster for the most part, some of them being a little bit more interesting than others, but it's never about the actual story. It's all about gameplay. And there have been complaints with the series around AI and stuff like that, and I honestly do get that, because the AI in this can be completely brain dead. But luckily, the fun of Sniper Elite, what I found to be the most fun when I've done co-op and stuff, because it's much better playing co-op, at least for me. But what I love about Sniper Elite is the fact that you can change the game however you want with the settings. There's so much customization with this game, and the same with 5, because you have the skill tree, which can change your loadout, your playstyle, if you want to be more aggressive, if you love just setting traps and watching Nazis blow up, which never gets old, let's be honest. Or if you want to be a dedicated sniper and you want to play this realistically, you can turn off the HUD. You can turn off all of that modern day AAA gaming bloat bullshit, like X-ray vision and map markers and all this stuff, and actually make the AI a little bit more self-aware, but they are still rather brain dead, and that sadly hasn't changed much with this game either. So the first positive, let's get into some of the newest stuff, okay? You do get some new enemy types this time around, which is quite fun, I guess. Basically, if you do piss off a certain amount of Germans, okay, they will actually deploy kind of secret agents after you, and they are much more deadly, much more alert, so that does make it feel a little bit more tense, because at times in Sniper Elite it does feel, depending on the difficulty you're playing at, sometimes it does feel like you can just get away with anything, because they don't really chase you around the map much in Sniper Elite. Once they've seen you but you run off somewhere else, you can easily trick the AI is what I'm saying. So having new enemy types does make the difficulty a little bit more tougher. So the next positive I would say is the fact that this game does keep the good old co-op intact. So there is the invasion option, and you get some new modes, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I really do like that they've kept that, even though this basically feels like Sniper Elite 5, the DLC. It is still nice that they have included the whole multiplayer mode intact with this game as well. And the same thing with the customization options. Like I said, if you do want to go a more aggressive route, or if you want to, kind of focus on booby traps and blowing up Nazis, which doesn't get old, like I said, you can do that, because there is still the skill tree, and they have kind of built on it slightly, tweaking it and refining it, so it's a little bit better, which I do think is great, because it just adds to gameplay variation. Let's talk about some of the negatives, because I do think that they could have added a lot more with this game. Like I said, go check out my other video if you want my full breakdown on it. But honestly, they could have added more to this game, added new interesting mechanics to, just make it feel a little bit more different if they are making this a standalone game. But a few negatives I would have to say is this looks exactly the same as the other Sniper Elite game, okay? It hasn't changed visually whatsoever. It still does suffer from that kind of AA, or it really comes from AAA, let's be honest, but that kind of game design philosophy in which, it kind of spells it out for you. You have freedom in the sandbox. That's what makes Sniper Elite so fun, but the way you actually traverse and interact with the level itself, it is still very restrictive, and that does feel very last gen. Just the way your character moves, the way you actually, go and traverse the level. Like, there's some things that you can climb over and some things you can't, which makes it feel very just janky. Same thing, like I said, with even the combat and the fighting with the camera, it just doesn't feel that smooth at all times, and it does feel almost like last gen experience, and that is because they haven't updated it whatsoever. So for veterans, of course, you're going to still love this because it's more Sniper Elite, even if the maps aren't as interesting as the Sniper Elite 5, because they had a lot more time with that game to make them super grand. And, like I said, there's a lot of replayability with those maps. The maps here, from what I've seen, are still good, but they just don't hold a candle to the original. Another big positive with Sniper Elite Resistance that's quite different from Sniper Elite 5, I would say, is the propaganda missions, okay? So once you've actually gone through a level, you've done the main missions, or you've done the side stuff, the sabotage and all that kind of stuff, there is a way to actually replay that level in a more unique way, which gives you like a timer and a score limit that you have to reach, and it basically changes the time of day of that level as well, which is quite cool because you get to see it in a different light. So basically you need to find these propaganda posters, and then once you find them, you can actually interact with this new propaganda mission type. But when I first heard about this mode, I thought it was going to be so much more. Like, you literally have to, find enemy intel and then like actually pull a full propaganda psyop on the actual Germans or something like that, something that's a little bit more involved, or have it linked with the co-op. But sadly, it is just kind of a new way to replay the same mission. Now, like many of you, I absolutely love Sniper Elite just for the bombastic kind of nature of this game, just blowing up Germans. What can I say? I'm a man of culture, and it just doesn't get old. It's always a lot of fun, the slow cam and all that stuff. But at this point, this game series has been going on for a long time, okay? They really do need to change the engine. They need to change the animation system to make it feel a lot more dynamic. They need to upgrade the AI so they actually flank you and chase you around a lot more. I understand that this game has a lot of fans, and I can see that. I'm one of them. But I think this is a step too far, where it literally just feels like the same game. And this could have just been DLC. It should have been DLC, in my opinion. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean that the levels aren't fun. And I did notice that there is more interaction with the levels, things that you can shoot, distractions, things to blow up, all that kind of stuff, which I really like. But it just doesn't feel as nuanced as the levels in Sniper Elite 5. And that's what really makes these games good, is, the way that you can actually interact with the main target, track that target around, get intel on him, find different things in the level to actually, assassinate the target more easily, or, just like different ways to actually complete the mission. And this does have that, but because it's on a smaller scale, it's just easy to find the target, blow his head off, and then, extract. But like I said, the difficulty options do really change the gameplay with all of the Sniper Elite games, and especially with this one, you do need to play with the settings, because to me, that is the fun of it. It can be a super sloppy AAA kind of game with yellow paint smeared all over the walls. You can't imagine, this is truly peak level of that type of experience if you want it to be, if you just want to switch off your brain. Or you can have it as a hardcore sniping experience. And the fact that the same game can kind of play as two different style of games, to me, that's pretty cool, and only Sniper Elite can really pull that off. Also, I think Harry Hawker is quite an interesting character. He makes a lot more funny quips compared to the main character in Sniper Elite 5, so I do enjoy playing as him. It does make the game feel a little bit fresh, especially with the new weapon types this time around. So if you really love, playing around with different weapon types, then you will get a kick out of this, because you do get, French weaponry, you get British weaponry, so that is a lot of fun. And the customization, like I said, with all of the guns, still here. Like I said, I was really hoping that these propaganda missions were literally going to be like a side game where you can actually, change the level before you enter it, depending on, the success of that propaganda campaign that you can pull off in like a side mission or something like that, that kind of impacts the actual bigger mission and how many enemies there are, how alert they are, stuff like that, how much intel you have. That would have made it far more dynamic, but sadly, this is pretty much the same thing, but, with some new enemy types, like I said, new weapons, new maps, but the maps don't feel as refined as something out of 5, and the gameplay is pretty much the same, graphically as well, everything is just the same. So if you want my full breakdown of what I think the reviews will be for Sniper Elite Resistance, go check out my other video and the discussion around creativity in modern gaming. But I do still enjoy this. It's hard not to because it is just fun, but I think this is the final game, okay? I really don't want another Sniper Elite game like this. I want something fresh and different for next time, but still it is a fun game, and if it isn't super expensive, then I don't really see the harm in it. I think Sniper Elite Resistance is a bit of a mixed bag with positives and quite a few negatives that I've highlighted. You know, still the kind of old gen style of stealth is here as well, and that hasn't been, you know, changed at all. You can still just distract enemies, they're dumb as hell, and you can just hide in a, you know, tiny bush with your head popping out of the bush, but it doesn't matter. They haven't really changed any of that, and you could kind of ignore that in the Sniper Elite 5 because the levels were so big and creative. I just don't think they have that same energy as Sniper Elite 5, and also that game is quite old at this point. But as a DLC, if you look at it like that, as it's not going to be full price, I do think that Sniper Elite Resistance is still a good time, and you will definitely enjoy it if you are a fan of the franchise. But don't go into this expecting that it's going to be the next big Sniper Elite game, because sadly it's not, and I think they really do need to take a look at why people love this game and not just doing the same thing over and over again. So it is a mixture of positives and negatives. I would say, you know, maybe grab it on sale at some point, unless if you're a die-hard fan of Sniper Elite. But that is my review of Sniper Elite Resistance. I still think it's a great game, and I'm having a lot of fun with the early access stuff, but there needs to be more to it in the future. So let me know what you think about this game, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Have a great day. Peace out.